A military operation is a state's or non-state actor's coordinated use of military force in response to an evolving circumstance. These steps are part of the military strategy to tip the scales in the state or actor's favor. At Jena, Napoleon, Vietnamese soldiers at Dien Bien Phu, the departure of Washington from Long Island. What causes a military operation to be so flawlessly finished that, in the back of your mind, you practically hear Shang Tsung himself declare flawless victory? With that, let's dive into the stories of the best military operations ever to take place in history. Welcome back to Military Knowledge, your favorite channel to know more about the military and their stories from around the world. We'll tell you about the top 10 of the most popular and successful military operations in the world. Number 1. Operation Overlord. The Allied operation at the Battle of Normandy, which began the successful invasion of German-occupied Western Europe during World War II, was known as Operation Overlord. The Normandy landings on June 6, 1944, or D-Day, marked the beginning of the operation. Up to the landing on June 6 of 1944, the Allied invasion of France on D-Day may have been the best-kept military secret ever. In spite of the fact that warfare with Germany continued into 1945, the result of the war in Europe was largely decided that day. Number 2. Operation Rolling Thunder. The North Vietnamese bombing campaign known as Rolling Thunder took place in 1967 and 1968, and American generals were certain that it would weaken the enemy's resolve and result in the war's end. Although it caused enormous harm, history has since shown that the United States overestimated the Vietnamese people's commitment to communism while underestimating their commitment to unified self-government. That doesn't take away from how awesome of a name Rolling Thunder really is. It perfectly captures the bombing campaign's waves of devastation. Additionally, it served as the inspiration for the title of a potent B-movie about a Vietnam veteran starring William Devine, which in turn served as the basis for Quentin Tarantino's film production firm. Number 3. Operation Red Dawn. After the American invasion of Iraq in 2003, Red Dawn was the operation to apprehend Saddam Hussein. In contrast to Osama bin Laden, he had not lived in relative opulence during his final days of freedom until American soldiers ultimately found him in a spider hole in December. The list inclusions of Red Dawn is due to the fact that it was named after one of the best pro-American movies of all time, a movie from 1984. When the Soviet Union invaded the United States, a group of ordinary youths organized a guerrilla organization to combat the oppressors and fight for American freedom. Most of them were already expert hunters, and they even showed the girls how to fire at the Soviets. Number 4. Operation Vittles. The Soviet Union's blockade of the western parts of Berlin in 1948 may have been the catalyst for the onset of World War III. President Truman authorized the airlift of life-saving food supplies for over a year in response to famished civilians until the Soviets gave in and permitted regular access. In order to resolve the problem diplomatically, the Western countries had 4 options. They could either abandon Berlin, revoke the currency form, push an armored column through the Soviet zone and risk war, or airlift supplies to Berlin. The last alternative was picked. Both the US Air Force and the Royal Air Force, or the RAF, took part. The British referred to the operation as plain fare, while the Americans called it Vittles. Rarely in history has an airlift by itself been able to save a sizable encircled population. Ordinary names like Operation Food Basket or Operation Dinner Table would have been chosen by the majority of military bureaucrats. It's possible that a Brit invented Operation Victuals. We all know who had a good wisdom to call it Vittles, a red-blooded American. Number 5. Operation Urgent Fury. Was the 1983 invasion of a small, 91,000 people, Caribbean country that was toying with communism absolutely necessary? Were they a domino effect, the first of many pro-Soviet governments to spring up the American area of influence? The American military lost 19 personnel in the course of Operation Urgent Fury, while 89 others were seriously injured. With 12 fatalities and 71 injuries, the army suffered the majority of the casualties. While the Navy suffered 4 fatalities and 3 injuries, the Marines suffered 3 fatalities and 15 injuries. The operation was over in a week. On the other hand, the name was among the best. Operation Urgent Fury sounds like the name of a motion picture starring Chuck Norris and Jean-Claude Van Damme as veteran special operations commanders working together to finally defeat the Sandinistas. Number 6. Operation Control Storm. President George H.W. Bush dispatched American soldiers to the Middle East in 1990 after Saddam Hussein's Iraqi forces invaded Kuwait in hopes that Saddam would recant. He refused, and the American forces engaged in a 6-week battle to recapture Kuwait and devastate Iraq. It was swift and received strong domestic support, in part due to outstanding live, round-the-clock television coverage provided by CNN, a still emerging new organization. Number 7. Operation Wrath of God. At the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich, Palestinian terrorists from Black September and the POL assaulted the athletes' village, kidnapped the Israeli team, and ultimately massacred 11 athletes and coaches. At least in part, the horrifying outcome of the standoff might have motivated the daring decision to attempt the perilous Entebbe operation 4 years later. Israel's Mossad intelligence service carried out a covert campaign over the course of the subsequent 16 years to exact revenge against the massacre's terrorist perpetrators and few of its most significant backers. The precise number of revenge deaths is unknown because it was a secret. Steven Spielberg depicted the operation in his underappreciated 2005 film, Munich. Does the name really acquire any justification? Israeli Jews believe in an Old Testament deity who is renowned for his rage and retribution. Number 8. Operation Barbarossa. German military leaders were eager to overthrow Stalin as they attacked the Soviet Union with Operation Barbarossa in June of 1941. They would take control of the Western USSR and use its population and natural resources to enlarge the Nazi war machine. The short story is that Hitler miscalculated this adversary, and the invasion was a terrible mistake that directly contributed to Germany's defeat in World War II. Which, now that I think about it, suggests that after Germany was defeated at Stalingrad, the attempt to rule Europe would actually come to an end. Number 9. Operation Magic Carpet. Almost 50,000 Yemenite Jews from Aden were transported to emerging state of Israel in 1949 to 1950 through a covert airlift. This mission generated a lot of controversy, as do most matters pertaining to the state of Israel. Israeli officials in particular focused on the number of Jews that British and American rescuers left behind. Over 8 million American military troops were repatriated from the European, Pacific, and Asian theaters as part of Operation Magic Carpet, a post-World War II initiative by the War Shipping Administration. In June of 1945, hundreds of Liberty ships, Victory ships, and troop transports started bringing back men from Europe. Operation Magic Carpet was divided into 2 phases. The European phase ended in February of 1946, and the Pacific phase lasted until September of 1946. However, the greatest name for a mission to whisk migrants across the Arabian deserts to safety is Operation Magic Carpet. Number 10. Operation Dynamo. Operation Dynamo was the theme of the year in the cinema, with Dunkirk and Darkest Hour each taking home many Oscars. Following the German invasion of France in May of 1940, Dynamo was the hastily devised strategy to remove British troops from the French beaches. A miracle that helped Great Britain to reorganize and ultimately win the war with the help of its allies was the rescue of almost 338,000 troops. According to the movie Darkest Hour, the operation's name was hastily assigned when Churchill insisted that the rescue effort get underway and informed his commanding officer that it required a name. The cop looks up and notices an actual dynamo wearing a metal badge that reads Dynamo, at which point the movie moves on without further explanation to the following scene. Sometimes the best names are the one you don't think too hard about. With that, we come to the end of today's video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and watch some other videos from our playlists too. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day.